Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Irene, for that introduction. As she has clearly mentioned, we're just going to have a regional stake talk of the progress towards anticipatory action in Africa. And this afternoon, we are privileged to have Luca Parodi, who will be joining us from Senegal, Dakar, to represent the views from West Africa. And Luca is the Focus-Based Financing Regional Coordinator from the Food Agriculture Organization. We are privileged to have physically, Omar Farook from the World Food Programme, and he will be representing the discussions that happened in Northern Africa online this morning. Then from the Southern Africa region, we'll be having Lena Huhn from the World Food Programme, who will be representing the discussions that also went on in the Southern Africa region. And from Eastern Africa, we'll be having Shaban Mawanda, who will be representing the different discussions that went on in Eastern Africa today. So maybe I can start from online because it's been more of Nairobi this afternoon. Lena, if you can hear us, can you just please share with us what's the big picture status of implementation of anticipatory action in your sub-region? Lena, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Hi, Phoebe. Yes, can you hear us in Johannesburg?
Maybe you can have the volume a little bit louder, tech team. Yes, but we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. So I'm joined here also with colleagues from the Climate Center and the government of Mozambique. As you know, our team was split up a bit between online, virtual discussions, and the ECHO workshop, in which we did an in-person marketplace, so bringing in the content and the discussions that we held in these two formats this morning. But also important to say that I will, and we will, be speaking on behalf of the Regional Anticipatory Action Working Group, which has been set up last year in Southern Africa. Secretariat members are FAO, IFRC, and WFP, but the membership obviously is wider. We have the key players in the field of anticipatory action, member of the working group, and it's grown to be a really efficient platform for coordination and alignment in the region. So I might start with impressions from the ECHO workshop because Eduardo and myself, we attended the marketplace in person, and then I'll head over to Izidine for a quick snippet of the online discussions. I think what was interesting to see this morning in ECHO's workshop, which is focused on disaster preparedness in a wider sense, is the core role anticipatory action played as topic, as theme. So we saw a lot of stalls from different actors focusing on anticipatory action programming in the region. And I think the focus is really on integration. So moving away from piloting, from siloed approaches, to really robustly integrated anticipatory action systems as part of the wider disaster risk management cycle in countries where we have systems being built, but in the regional level as well. Eduardo was actually hosting a stand. Maybe quickly over to you. The discussions you held this morning.
Thank you, Lena. My name is Eduardo Castro. I work for WFP Mozambique with a second role to National Institute for Disaster Risk Management, specifically for development of anticipatory action plans and focus-based financing for droughts. Regarding the marketplace this morning that is being held on behalf of ECHO, I was presenting a stand of Mozambique WFP, where we were sharing the experience that we have enabling the National Institution of Mozambican government in improving their capability of predicting and monitoring droughts, as well as integrating all different stakeholders in planning this anticipatory action and coordinating the different actors in terms of implementation in case of an activation. From that, we have some impression from other stands as well, because I was able to appreciate the stand of countries like Lesotho and Malawi, where they share different view that in fact working in silos is at the moment the challenge, because at one hand we have different agents trying to bring in this new approach of anticipatory action, yet they are not coordinated. At the other hand, we have the governmental institution not integrated in this process. So this is the challenge that from the marketplace that was being held this morning, I think that is the biggest challenge for this anticipatory action approach. Thank you.
Great.
things
Thank you so
Eduardo.
much, Lena. I'll have to stop you because of time so that we can also get to hear from the other regions. So maybe if I can quickly move to Eastern Africa. Shaban, what's the big picture status of implementation in the Eastern African region?
Yeah, this morning, I think a lot of views were shared that communicate to the big picture status of implementation in Eastern Africa. Generally, I think participants raised that there is still big appetite to be more proactive on how to respond to the rising risks and also impacts, especially on the two major events of floods and drought. Of course, the impacts remain visible, but the participants also in this room noted the increased awareness on the need for anticipatory action and also the appreciation on how anticipatory action could be integrated in existing work. Of course, participants also reported that there is increased appetite for anticipatory action. More partners are slowly getting on board. Of course, the question is if we have reached where we want to be. And finally, also what I noted was that implementation is slowly taking shape on anticipatory action, but probably not yet to the desired scale due to the enormous needs that are visible. However, we saw some partners already implementing or being engaged in risk assessments, in risk monitoring, forecast monitoring, but also, most importantly, prioritizing capacity strengthening on anticipatory action. So that's what I managed to note from the discussion this morning. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Shaban. And Omar, Northern Africa, first time we're having you, so we are really happy to have you on board. What's the big picture?
Thank you so much. I think one thing is different than other sub-region here is the footprint of the organizations in Northern Africa is not as big as others. So it's like a couple of countries where we have the members who are actively working with anticipatory action has limited presence, to be honest. However, there are some initiatives going on, and there are some ambiguity about like some of the organization consider Sudan as North Africa and some other, it goes to different portfolios. So it's also kind of, there's a room for more coordination internally within the organization. And I think there's a huge scope working around data preparedness and working with the government in different area. So there's a gap of evidence that anticipatory action is going on. There are some climate actions which kind of consider data, historical data, but data around forecasting or forecasted impact is still missing. The good thing is some of the study is ongoing. So there was a ODI, WFP-led study, and there will be an initiative, a joint initiative where community of practice will be launched, including Middle East, so Middle East, North Africa. So there are opportunities to engage and set the priority. I think gap is known, but we really need to do some internal mapping on the readiness of different countries.
Great. Thank you so much, Omar, and we look forward that in the coming years, you'll be able to catch up with the different regions as to where we are in terms of anticipatory action. Luca, from West Africa, Sahel, what's the big picture from the discussions you had yesterday?
Hello, Phoebe. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Okay, so well, unfortunately, West Africa, we're just doing it digitally. Next time, we'll try and see if we can also meet in person. There's also, I think, a Gigma there in person from the Red Cross who supported the organization. We have been having a marketplace, first marketplace yesterday because of time differences. And we had around 27 people, and this marketplace was organized. I need to thank also Sheikh Khan of Red Cross, Vivian, Yassine, and Mariama of WFP, and and Alassane of Star Network. Overall, what's the big picture? I think the new thing is that it wasn't just West Africa, it was Francophone Africa, and it was made on purpose. Because actually, yesterday, what came out from voices of several colleagues from Central Africa, it's where is the biggest gap. Central African countries haven't yet probably been involved as much as they would. There were several colleagues working either in civil protection, meteorological organizations. We even had a couple of parliamentarians and also colleagues from the Red Cross. They really raised the need to, be more involved in a region that is affected by a variety of hazards. The big picture is that I think things are moving forward very fast in certain countries, because such as Niger, for instance, whereas there's a major disparity across Francophone Africa. There's still a need to do specific sessions, specific manuals and tools in a language that is appropriate for the local actors so that they can really, make them their own. I think some of the key highlights that I can raise is the fact that, yeah, there's some countries that are been advancing, like Niger. For instance, they even integrated anticipatory action in the National Food Security Strategy last year, but also the arrival and the piloting of the SURF anticipatory action window in 3 countries, such as Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad, has really scaled up the involvement of the humanitarian community in these countries, the level of understanding. So there's been a lot of progress in certain countries. There's been an expansion in the countries where anticipatory action is being implemented, such as in Cameroon. We're continuing in Senegal. Many other colleagues are continuing in other parts. So overall is expanding. I think the more it's expanding, the more we'll have to also address the issue of what anticipatory action does in a context of protracted crisis. And this is probably something to discuss, because these are elements that come up quite often, and these are also elements of technical discussion, but also coordination that hasn't been properly yet been taken up. So I think it's moving forward at different speeds. I think there's a need to have some colleagues are coming also with regional profiles in WFP and in other organizations, and that should also help in really doing joint advocacy and a stronger coordination, because there's still this need, and we need to bring more on board regional organizations. And there's going to be future activities that will tackle that from different levels, from FAO and from other organizations. So I don't know if any of my colleagues want to add any points, and nice to see many common and familiar faces in Nairobi.
Thank you so much, Luca. Quite interesting to see the progress that is across the different regions, but also clearly the gaps are coming out in terms of, let's say, the coordination that's needed, the different crises that are coming up, and we really need to focus on that. Anna, I want to go back to you and just to continue on a point that Luca has mentioned in terms of coordination. I know you have the regional we call it RAC, the Regional Anticipatory Action Working Group. How has that supported coordination in the Southern Africa region, and how is it supporting the scale-up of anticipatory action discussions in your region? Over to you, Anna. Anna, can you hear us? Okay, as you're waiting for the Johannesburg studio.
Am I with you?
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I think with ROG, as you said, we call it ROG. It was an important platform that was established last year, and it's important to have a platform and a space for all these actors to come together and figure out how we can become stronger and more efficient together and move away from siloed approaches. So we hosted the first Southern Africa Dialogue Platform last year, in which we did also sort of strategic priority mapping, and based off which we then developed the regional roadmap for anticipatory action, guided by 4 core pillars, which are essentially the core components of anticipatory action programming: alignment of triggers, establishing coordination frameworks for anticipatory action, aligning financing instruments, and then also joining forces for enhanced, stronger advocacy at regional level. And I think the fact that this regional body was established, we can support as regional bodies also the in-country discussions that happen often in the form of national technical working groups, communities of practice, but having a more unified mainstream approach from the regional angle, essentially, strengthens and makes those dialogues at national level a bit easier. And we have great news that the Secretariat of the Regional Anticipatory Action Working Group is now funded for the implementation of the regional roadmap, guided by these 4 core pillars over a 2-year interagency regional program through ECHO. So that is really giving us also the means to have a closer look at how enhanced coordination alignment can look like. Whereas we often see, obviously, funds for anticipatory action funding the siloed and agency-specific approaches. We now have funding available to really figure out how to come closer together, make sense to coordination, and develop robust guidance for the region.
Great, thank you
so
so
we're
much.
excited to see what the next 2 years will bring.
Exactly, it looks quite, the future looks quite bright, I can say, with the financing. So coming back to the physical room, we talked about the big pictures, but Shaban and Omar, what has been the key? We have also heard about the challenges, but what are the opportunities to move forward anticipatory action in the region? Eastern Africa, what did they say are some of the key opportunities we have in moving forward anticipatory action?
Okay, thank you very much. I think what I gathered in terms of key opportunities is really doing what already is being done, but doing it better, and maybe trying to do it in a stronger way. There is, for instance, the stakeholder engagement. Already different stakeholders are being engaged, but probably we need stronger coordination, like colleagues in Southern Africa have talked about. There is already an interest by all the others, the state actors. Mr. Banak here was sharing how the government of South Sudan is coming on board, but also the different actors who are present here were sharing with us examples how they have had memorandum of understanding with government and so on, but also the other non-state actors who are coming on board. So this interest, I think the challenge is how do we use it as an opportunity, as a springboard, to make sure that we get even others on board, because at the end of the day, the ultimate objective, if we are to be successful, is to really embrace an all-on-board approach, like many have been talking about. There is some existing funding. Of course, the gaps are enormous, the needs are enormous, so that creates the gap in the funding challenge. So how do we utilize the current funding to be able to attract more financing to be able to reach the desired goal? So again, for me, these are some of the opportunities I highlighted. But of course, there are also major missing links, which could also be great to note here. So for instance, the East Africa region here this morning was talking about that, yes, we are anticipating these events, and it makes even more meaning to anticipate impact. But the question is, are we doing enough? So for instance, most of the economies here are agricultural based, okay? And we know, for instance, that some crop pests are dependent on seasons. Are we supporting the agriculture sector to make sure that they're also doing early actions, for instance, in response to these crop pests outbreaks that come with seasons? I think these are some of the questions that are there. So looking at what already is being done, but doing it better. Thank you.
Great discussions from Eastern Africa. Omar, what are the opportunities you are foreseeing in Northern Africa?
Thank you. Well, in North Africa, as I mentioned, it's new, so there are many opportunities in that way. But one thing that came out of discussion that there's an opportunity to work together. And in the countries, especially where nowadays Northern African countries, they're more aware about the impact of climate change because it's just hitting on them, right? And there are thinking around the food system, there are thinking about the production. It also relates to the price hike which is happening. So there are opportunities to work together in a way so that we can help governments into doing a data preparedness. When we are saying data preparedness, it's data in different sectors which will help us to identify who are really, really vulnerable. And one of the entry points that came up that to work with the government to look at the existing early warning system and make it more inclusive, and how we can really add the forecasting element to the early warning system. And that can be the starting step as we work with the other element of the existing program. Third point which came, as I think East Africa already said, their existing program, and we don't need to bring anticipatory action as a standalone program from the beginning. So there are a lot of investment which is going on, like for asset creation, for livelihood opportunities. How do we look at in a smarter way into the seasonality and find out a trigger to do anticipation? So I think there's an opportunity to look how we are implementing program, and can we be a little bit smarter to bring flexible funding to do anticipatory action.
Great. Thank you so much, Omar. Quite a lot of opportunities for you indeed. Luca, from the Sahel region, what did you identify as some of the opportunities to move forward anticipatory action in your region?
Well, the discussion about opportunities is going to be more today. The discussion about opportunities, you know, we have, like yesterday, we focused mostly on what has been going on, what are been some of the key updates. So it's not that I want to speak bluntly for the entire group, but I think the opportunities are there at the level of institutionalization, either regional or national. The more governments are involved, the more there is really some traction. So I think, to me, that's the way forward. And then the second real opportunity is to combine with major risk insurance financing systems of the banks, as well as, you know, the insurance and flexible and parametric programs. I mean, especially for the sector in which I work on. That's, to me, the opportunities and the way forward, and then others are going to come up from the joint discussion, I think.
Great, thank you so much, Luke, and we look forward to hearing to those opportunities, because I think once we share on these different opportunities, then the different regions would be able to sometimes get ahead, like, oh, we never thought about that as an opportunity. So we look forward to hearing of more opportunities from that side. We want to go back to Johannesburg studio to also hear from them on some of the opportunities that they identified in their discussion. But also, just to the audience, both in Nairobi and online, we'll give you an opportunity to also reflect what has come out from what came out from your discussion that you have not had here. So if there's anyone who would want to contribute, feel free to raise your hand and I'll identify. So Anna, over to you in terms of the opportunities that you identified to help us move anticipatory action ahead in Southern Africa.
Thanks, Phoebe. I'll maybe briefly start and then see if my colleagues here have any additions. But I think beyond bridging the regional and national divide through platforms such as the working group, it's also continuing to approach different hazards. So we had quite some innovative work happening at the moment. Acha looking into cholera, forecasting cholera outbreaks, and implementing anticipatory action ahead. Really exciting things. We're also starting to look at anticipatory action in context of fragility. Northern Mozambique. So I think we're continuing to learn and to exchange on the learning. I think what came up a lot in this morning's discussions is the hunger for enhanced cross-border collaboration on anticipatory action. Hazards don't know borders, so we need to enhance the cooperation across borders, essentially, to carry out anticipatory action and come closer together. Tied to that, I think also a lot of hunger for peer learning. understanding the context of anticipatory action systems in different countries across the region. Again, I hope the working group can be a bit of a platform to also bring national level actors and fostering a bit that cross-country dialogue. And then I think also continuing to look into how we can really scale this up and build national systems or build on national systems. And I think there, this morning we discussed really the big potential of social protection for reaching this flexibility and scalability of anticipatory action programs. I think there we have some innovative work happening in Lesotho, supported by the Red Cross, in Mozambique, supported by WFP, and I think it's really just the start of understanding how this could really look and be operationalized moving forward. Let me stop, colleagues.
Just to add, one of the opportunity in the science perspective is probably the improvement or development of a drought trigger over the region, which is one of the biggest issues that we spend a lot of time discussing. How do we forecast drought? Probably is going to be an interesting opportunity from the science point of view to develop drought triggers for the regions and beyond.
Great. Any other person from Johannesburg? Or are we done, Anna?
And also, I think that is greatly important to involve governmental institutions of disaster risk management and reduction. From the market today, this morning, we realized that we may advance as agencies with anticipatory action approach, but without involving the governmental institutions, it will be like this style approach, and the government won't be able to take this new approach and move on to the scale up for national coverage.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those feedback from Johannesburg. I can hear myself quite a lot, but anyway. Anyone in the room who wants to add on the reflections? I'm just looking across to see. Are you stretching? I can see somebody at the back. So I don't know if they're stretching or... Sorry, I can't see. It's right behind my screen. So if you can have a mic just given to them. Yes, please. Please be brief.
Thank you, Phoebe. Yeah, just to share a bit of a reflection on the importance of the dialogue platform and the different opportunities that can really come from it. For me, especially working with the government counterparts in Namibia, it's quite important to see how we can collaborate more with the government in terms of integrating this early action protocols that we are also trying to develop into the country's early warning systems, and also just to see the greater opportunities of strengthening and building capacity both at the national society as well as the government counterparts, especially the meteorologic services, because that will enable them to assist also the national society in developing those triggers for the drought EAP, and just generally being able to forecast well on the drought situation within the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eddie Jemba is my name. Thinking about the opportunities that we could leverage, I think one of them is the private sector in general. Where are they? And we need them. Probably they are not represented in this room. We need them. And when we talk about the private sector, I would also want to point out the micro, small, and medium enterprises who are always close to the people. I think we need to explore how to work with them extensively. And as Sirak would know, there is another opportunity that we have not explored properly, and that is evidence or showing how anticipatory actions set up manifest in the urban context. And as we see conflict and climate challenges converging in the urban areas, I think we need to prepare ahead of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for that. So the call for bringing in the private sectors on board into this discussion, and then collaboration with government, especially the National Disaster
On
Management
implique le
Authorities.
secteur privé et puis collaboration dans la gestion des désastres, la collaboration au niveau
All right. Sorry about that. I thought it was actually somebody contributing to it. So I was just saying quite some bit of contributions from the private sector, inclusion, to also collaboration with the National Met, as well as the National Disaster Management. I see one last comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to have an addition to what Luca said. During our yesterday meeting for the West Africa session, there was actually this sort of commitment from one of the MP who joined the meeting. He actually stressed the fact that decision makers across West Africa and Central Africa are more committed now to anticipatory action, and they even want to add some items on the table. That is, he was, for example, mentioning the climate and migration nexus, for example. He was talking about climate refugees and the need for both humanitarians and governments to engage more with the communities, not just communities that are affected, but also the host communities. And I think this is something which also came back during the discussions this morning. So I think that there is a need for us to also use this opportunity, the opportunity provided by the decision makers to actually take action and bring that to scale.
So back to our panelists, just as I come to the conclusion of this discussion, from Eastern Africa, and based on us taking a stock of where we've come from, Shaban, what would the Eastern Africa region want to see reflected in the roadmap that we'll be creating in the next few days?
Okay, thank you very much. I think just like I stated, the priorities moving forward should on one hand be guided by the question, have we reached where we are so that we start new things? And I think what was coming up this morning is that probably we are doing some great moves, but the needs are enormous. We still need to do more and better of the existing. So that's the basis of that. And in line with that, I think from what I heard, what was coming up is prioritizing capacity strengthening, especially I think on research and science, because we scored very badly on what we have done. So I think that has to come. And again, the second is probably doing what we've been doing, but more tactical. So for instance, we had some actors who are doing a lot of policy influencing, but now can we be more tactical in a way that we start to see results as a result of policy engagement? Do we see increased financing for anticipatory action in the different countries in the region? So I think that's one. And secondly, the other one is still on stakeholder engagement and partnerships. I think we have tried to do, but we still need to do more in a more tactical way. So like I stated, aiming at an all-on-board approach is everyone really understanding, people aware of anticipatory action and the positives that come with it. My colleague Eddie was talking about, for instance, the private sector. Are we engaging them tactically? Because for them, what they want to hear, for instance, the small and medium enterprises are the threats to their business continuity, because they thrive from hand to mouth on a daily basis. So can we be able to tactfully tell them that if they don't embrace anticipatory action, that there's a possibility that these events are actually going to disrupt business continuity, and yet there is an opportunity that they can implement some early action. Therefore, finally, I think what I see is there is still need to improve interest or to increase interest. So we have done that, and we see critical partners such as government actors and also other non-state actors in the space, but we are not yet to a level where we want. So probably we are talking about from dialogue to action, yes. For those who are converted, let's move to action. But I think the dialogue still needs to continue, especially to those that we feel are not yet with us, and we need them to come to us. So that's the reading, at least from this morning, from what I captured. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And I think from the Eastern Africa this morning, we have one converted person with us today. Anna, from your discussion this morning, what would the Southern Africa region want to see reflected in the joint plans that you're developing, briefly?
Yes, so I would say it would be nice to see the geographic scope of anticipatory action implementation growing, both at the national context in terms of the scale of our operations that we carry out, but then also addressing a bit of gaps we identified this morning, countries that are not being addressed as of yet. We have few actors working on anticipatory action, whereas we have others, such as Zimbabwe, where we have 8 humanitarian agencies currently supporting the government. So better distributing essentially our efforts and supporting further governments in the establishment of these anticipatory action systems moving forward. So essentially expanding the scope, but then also, as Eduardo said, ensuring institutionalization, ensuring that whatever we have set up and the successes we've achieved essentially over the past years, that those are sustained and maintained and led and driven by the government moving forward. And that also encompasses having a look at how we can create sustainability for funding for anticipatory action activations that governments can tap into. We have some very early ideas that we're discussing at the regional level of setting up regional contingency funds for anticipatory action. Things like that will really allow the region to implement this autonomously, sustainably moving forward. So I think these are really the priorities for us. And then I think, in addition, continuing to learn, to further mature the methodologies we use jointly, with commitments made by the several actors that we do this in good coordination as to not overwhelm and overstretch governments and approaching them from different angles. I think that is really clear that that is our responsibility to ensure harmonized approaches. But also curious to hear from Izzedine representing the academic community. Maybe also that, ensuring tighter links to scientific actors, academic actors across the region. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Briefly, Izzedine, because of time, we are running out of time, so really brief, Izzedine. Really brief. Please go ahead.
The role of academia moving forward.
Well, the role of academia moving forward is that when Irene was facilitating and counting, one of the issues that was found at the KIGMAS table is that academia or scientists are not present in this discussion. So probably moving forward, we need to be more involved in these type of discussions and contributing more in the development of the triggers, for example.
Great, thank you so much, Izzedine. So moving over to the Sahel, Luca, I know you're still having your discussions, but any impressions on what the different actors want to see reflected in the roadmap?
I'm sorry, but there's some echo, so I could hear you really badly on your question. Could you please repeat?
Yeah, so from the discussions that you had yesterday with the different actors, any impressions so far that we can pick in terms of what they want to see reflected in the joint plans that we'll be developing over the next 3 days?
As I said, and I think in Francophone Africa, it's like a little bit like in Italy, people tend to talk a lot. So that's why first we said, okay, what have we been really able to achieve? And then the discussions about ambitions and what we want to plan, it's today and tomorrow. I think there's definitely a need for technical support, like structured technical support. I think that came quite clearly from Central Africa, to ensure that, there are requests that follow through and that there is also specific material in French that is provided, trainings, tools. I think that's, to me, and that needs to be clearly put into the work, because as I was saying, there's a major disparity There are places where you want to start working on institutionalization and you need to put that into the planning. But there are places where you're starting not from scratch, but from really initial stages. So and those places they need to pick up, and they should be supported and should be prioritized more. I think that needs to come out in the plan
Great, thank you so
to
much.
bring pretty much everyone a bit more to speed, you know,
Yes.
and not just have one or two countries that shine and then other countries which are left a bit back.
Great, thank you so much, Luca, and we'll make sure that we don't speak quite a lot over the next 3 days, just enough. I think we will stop at that, colleagues. I don't know if they have any questions in the audience. I don't know if there's any feedback from our online participants, Irene, Anita, or Lydia, who is online. Any reflections from our online participants, or they are good to go? Any feedback on the chart, Anita? All right, then I think we can stop at that. I promised you 5 minutes to finish 5 minutes earlier so that you can have more coffee and more tea. So just to thank our panelists, Luca online, Anna, Lena and your team, Shaban and Omar, thank you so much for representing the different regions. Really, really good discussions that went on. We see that we are seeing anticipatory action going on, but we need to do more work. There's quite a number of opportunities that are there to advance this work. And we look forward to ensuring that all these discussions will be reflected in our joint planning over the next 3 days.